Will the UK bring in a wealth tax? That's going to be the topic of today's video. Now, a few weeks ago, I mentioned how Argentina was going to be bringing in a wealth tax, and indeed it would be a de facto expat tax because it would hit Argentinians living outside the country more than those inside the country. Now, the UK, or at least some people in the UK, believe the UK should follow in Argentina's footsteps. But what's very interesting about some of the articles that I put below from The Guardian, BBC and so on, is a lot of people are suggesting it should be 1% for 5 years on people with assets of £500,000 or more. Let's say you've got a combined total of £1 million, 500,000 each and so on. Now, what's very interesting about this is you can see how this might be sold. It might be sold on, oh, this is only 1% for 5 years. Where have we heard that before? Remember in 2007, 2008 in the UK, a one-off, so-called one-off tax, or at least temporary tax on people earning over £150,000 was brought in. 12 years later it still exists. And indeed the US income tax, people forget the US didn't have any income tax whatsoever at the federal level between 1776 and about 1913 to 1914. It was brought in, often the excuse was about wars, and it was dramatically increased again in the Second World War, but then it kind of just stayed. And it got higher and higher, at least for the first few decades after it was brought in. Then it kind of leveled off. So obviously if it starts off at 1% for 5 years, it might just continue after 5 years. And for that matter, increase after 5 years, or not increase, but of course with inflation, just keep it the same forever, and then more and more people will pay it. But what's also interesting is it's being sold on the basis that people can't really avoid it. Unless somebody's already outside the UK or whatever, or maybe has already given up their British passport, they're going to try to also charge expats on it. It's being sold on the basis, well, people can't plan against it, which is very interesting. And that's why I say it's always good to have insurance. It's always good to even have second residencies and second passports just in case something like this can happen, or at least consider doing those things. Because you take it, let's say a British person living in the UK has a British passport and they have a Panamanian passport or something like that, and something very extreme was to happen, they could always at least consider emigrating and changing their residency, or indeed changing their citizenship, renouncing their citizenship. Whereas if something new happens and you're always reactive, then you always have to take unexpected measures. So for example, now there's 5,500 American people every year who try to renounce their citizenship because of the whole taxation on expats. But of course, the people who pre-prepared just in case something like that would happen were in a much better situation. So I'm not saying the UK will bring in this tax. I think the UK is less likely than some other countries in the world to do it, but I do think next year, in the next 10 years, there's going to be an increase in the number of people, a number of countries should I say, who are going to bring in the following taxes: expat taxes, digital taxes, and indeed taxes on wealth. And some of them could affect both. So for example, if the UK government or French government, German government says, right, we're going to have a one-off wealth tax on people living in Germany, that wouldn't be an expat tax. But if they say, right, we're going to tax all German citizens or all British citizens living globally, a one-time fee, then of course de facto that's an expat tax, because you don't have to pay most forms of tax when you go as an expat, apart from if you're American, if you're a nationality. So that would be bringing in an expat tax by stealth. So I think people have got to watch out for these trends. It's going to be very interesting how coronavirus is going to be paid for, and you can imagine how it's going to be sold to people. That look, you've got all these people in big tech making a lot of money. The big tech firms are going higher and higher in terms of their valuations, and inequality is going higher. So we have to pay for this by taxing wealthier people. I think that's going to become a bigger issue in the next 10 years. But like always, it's of course ridiculous because it just causes unexpected issues. So for example, I was saying in the Argentina video, all that will happen is people will try to avoid it. Lawyers and accountants will have a field day. They'll make a lot of fees. It'll cause unexpected actions, moral hazards and whatever. But still, a populist politician could still try to bring this in globally. I mean, earlier this year, a Canadian politician suggested that Canada should follow in the US footsteps of overseas taxation. And one of the points that he was making was, well, of course, wealthier Canadians could move their citizenship, or should I say residency, to Dubai or Qatar or whatever. And if you just tax Canadians living globally, this will take away that option basically. So almost like a type of slavery where if you got a passport, you have to pay to your home country. So I think more countries will do this in the future, so people should be prepared.